Hi, hello everybody. Welcome back to our channel for happy learning in first BDS oral histology. We are continuing today with the tips in how to take effective notes. The second part. So last part we have seen about the necessity for effective notes taking and the other importance of notes taking, how it contributes. In this session, the part 2, we will be saying the commonly known and other types of notes taking that makes one eligible to use this skill effectively. There are several methods. We will deal about them in detail. Now, we shall go into the types of note-taking methods. The Cornell method is the most recently advocated concept, the outline method, the mapping method, the charting method, the sentence or paragraphs. The Cornell method is the most widely followed method, and it is a systematic format of condensing and organizing the notes without the need for laborious recopying by dividing the paper into specific section and follows a specific format and works on the principles of R7. Meaning it is not the process of taking the notes alone, but ensure that you read and distill the knowledge that is being discussed or shared. So it has recording the entire concepts, recalling it, reducing or distilling to simple concept, recapitulate the entire process, recite, review, and reflect the entire process of the lecture. So how it is done? It has got every paper that is to be taken notes is divided into 3 columns. A Q column 2.5 inches, the notes column 6 inches, and this is about for a A4 sheet, and a summary column about 2 inches in the lowermost area of the paper. So the Q column, the notes column, is where you record the points in the main lecture notes using concise sentence or symbols or abbreviations, using list or putting spaces during the class. And in the Q column happens after, where you, after the lecture, you go through all the things, draws up only the main idea and questions or important points that connects all the points discussed, important diagrams, and study prompts or the Q keywords, and during the class or after the class and doing review. And once you review, you put a summary column, put in quick reference area after or while studying. So you keep notes during the class in the main space. Each time instructor moves to a new point or a new concept, you allow some space so that you can add up more points in the future. After the class, complete phrases and sentences as much as possible and start to organize your cues in the left-hand column. To review or to recollect, cover the main section with a card or a paper and say cue out the cues or the key points allow as much and move to say how much you have grasped the concept and see if it matches what you have written during the class. So this is basically more of review and recollect. So essentially in the record section, you write up the information, the heading, the date, time, and why all this concept and that. And during the recall, you add up more concepts. Say it was how to study 19 Paul Walter or Walter Paul, and stay focused, analyze, think rapidly, schedule, give gaps, fill the gap, test day, okay, text why it is important. All these things you write up in your recall. Then go for reduce, a condensed version of your concept. Reduce the entire lecture to a couple of keywords and concepts. Then recapitulate, still more reduce it. Then check again whether you are able to recollect by reciting, checking. Then review. If there is any mistakes, correct yourself. Then reflect, say after say 3 or 4 weeks. This is essentially a complete end-to-end notes taking method. Again, to recapitulate, record, recall, fill, okay, then reduce the entire concept to cues, then recapitulate, recite, review, correct, reflect. The Cornell methods has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that it is very organized and systematic means for recording and reviewing all dental related notes. And it is an easy format for pulling out major concept and ideas at any time later in the future. It is very simple, efficient, saves a lot of time and effort once done, but it calls for do it right in the first place itself. Disadvantage that it is time consuming, laborious, and need to work daily whenever the lecture is over. Meticulous documentation, that means you need to be 100% attentive during the lecture, as well as sincerely without monitoring. You have to fill in the cue page and summary page, recite, recall. The other less laborious methods include the outline method, where the lecture is organized, when the lecture is organized and sequential, and there is enough space and time in the lecture to think about and make organizational decision and say which is important. Here, listen and write down the points in an organized fashion based on intention. See the initial topic, next sub-points, points. This will be only possible when the demonstrator or the lecturer gives the same series or sequence of contents. Place the major points farthest to the left and intend each more specific point to the right. So use a natural recall method. So levels of importance will be distance away from major points. So this will be the most question building points. Intention can be simple with no markings or space relationship, or more complex. You can use color pencils, you can use bold letters, and that is customization of the entire concept. So main points, specific points, and more specific points. This can be highlighted by key points or highlight markers. You can develop your own pattern. The advantages is that it is a well-organized system. If done correctly, reduces the time need to edit, as in your Cornell systems. Easy to turn main points into questions. You can break up the questions into lectures, but it requires more thought process in the class, meaning the class has to be more organized and you have to have read the concepts much earlier than the lecture. And it may not reflect the relationship by sequence when needed, and does not lend itself to variety of review and question applications. So it is a rigid method. You cannot adapt it. And very difficult if lecture speaks fast and you don't have time in the lecture. And this happens only in linear classes. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, waterfall method. 1 to 2 to 3, 3 to 4. If there is a relationship between 1 to 4, this method might not happen. Unfortunately, our medical and dental courses are not linear classes. They are non-linear in application. Suddenly you have to go back again and jump with the basic concepts, revise back. So this outline method, you have to be very, very careful if you are adapting it. So you have to have some flexibility. The most easiest and picturative is the mapping method. Here, the entire lecture notes will be in a graphic representation of ideas, facts, and their correlation. Very, very useful if you have a strong visual memory and are able to condense the entire concept into one image. What is this? It is you keep the topic in the center with a circle around it, and you draw all the major facts related to the topic, when, where, why, how, everything, and start to explain it or explode it further. You add up the link and facts and build the story around it. You continue the process as more defining process or ideas are presented by the lecturer or demonstrator. This is an idea that I would say or recommend my students to develop, because once you have this concept or this paper, that's it. This will serve as the cue. This will help you to put all facts. And once you have made a mere glance at that, will help you to get reminded of the entire concepts here. We have already kept a basic set of essential mind maps for first BDS oral histology. You can collect it or request it from your mentors, or come back to me for the images again. The advantage is that it helps to keep a visual track of the lecture. The relationship between the topics are easy to see, and you can cover lines for memory, review relationship. It is your own concept. Visual memory is the most solid memory, that pictorial or diagram effect. And you may, if you miss to hear changes in the content from major points to fact, you have to redo the entire concepts. So it can be visually over challenging, over complex. So you have to be super attentive. You have to have a deep understanding of the subject and learning process. You have to be very, very, very studious enough to keep up the concepts. The charting method is the use of columns with appropriate heading labels in a table format, wherein you read the entire concept ahead of the class, classify categories to be covered in the lecture. This is only when possible when the lecturer keeps you informed about the class. You prepare note paper with columns and categories as headings for each. So this column is ready before the lecture and you just populate this. That is the whole place of in placing the information in appropriate columns. The advantages is it reduces the amount of writing, the number of points needed to be put up in the chart, provides easy review mechanisms and revisions, facilitates memorization, comparison, correlation type of approach. For these kinds of concept, I would recommend the charting method or charting method of notes making. But for this, pre-reading and understanding the key concepts are essential. So you have to have time spent in preparation for the class, and the need to learn how to develop effective categories is a challenge. It is technique sensitive. If you are not develop the columns before the class, you will be facing challenges. And fully engaged in the lecture, otherwise certain columns will be empty. The classic sentence or paragraph making, which every other student till 12th would have used, a composite of all the things. And I would say this is the customized notes taking pattern that you have evolved over the period of years. With this, we come to the end of the tips for effective notes taking part 2. And we will come back again with the part 3 soon with basic tips on overall. Today, you have learned the types of common notes taking methods, and I hope you will inculcate some of this, adapt and develop a customized notes taking method for yourselves for throughout your BDS course as well as in your life. Happy learning and stay connected with our channel.